Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to our spring deep dive series where we take that holistic 50,000 foot perspective on all 138 FBS teams, as well as provide my record prediction for each of these teams as we embroil ourselves in spring football a little bit more. Spring practices are going off. We're starting to see some spring games, and it just feels like a good time to dive into these rankings and give a little individual video for each program. And we'll pick things up in this episode where, as you can see from the title of this video, we are going to be talking about a newcomer to the Mountain West in the Northern Illinois Huskies, who come in as my 130th ranked team in college football entering the 2026 season. Could they play themselves a little bit higher? Who knows? Going to be some interesting questions about this team that I can't wait to delve into. But before we get into the specifics of Northern Illinois football, I need you guys to go ahead and do a couple of things for me real fast. Make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, and then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new. A lot of work that obviously goes into building a comprehensive 1 through 138 list. So your support is so valued in those type of endeavors. And just hitting the like button and hitting the subscribe button really would help a brother out tremendously in that regard. But let's go ahead and dive into this conversation, starting with Northern Illinois. As I mentioned, the 130th ranked team in college football entering this season, and a team that's in a crossroads in of a program for two separate reasons, right? We're talking about entering a brand new conference. They've been a long time member of the MAC, and they have departed the MAC, and they are now going to be a member of the Mountain West, which looks a little wonky on paper, but now that they added North Dakota State as well, the addition doesn't look as weird, although Northern Illinois still sticks out like a sore thumb at this point. But it's not just because Northern Illinois is leaving the MAC and joining the Mountain West entering the 2026 season, which is why this program is in the crossroads. But another thing as well is that Thomas Hammock is no longer the head coach of the Northern Illinois Huskies because he left a couple of months ago at best to be the offensive analyst for the Seattle Seahawks and be an offensive assistant coach at the NFL. Now, Thomas Hammock, the perception of him versus the reality is different. So if you're looking at Northern Illinois through the rose-colored glasses, what you probably remember from him the most was that big time win over Notre Dame and also a conference championship appearance a few years ago. But in reality, Thomas Hammond could have been the one holding this program back. And what do I mean by that is think about what happened to Northern Illinois in the 2010s. This was a team that was consistently winning 10 plus games. They even made it to a New Year's Six Bowl when Jordan Lynch was the starting quarterback. And I believe Jordan Lynch was invited to the Heisman Trophy ceremony that year, which for a G6 player to get invited to the Heisman Trophy ceremony, that's a massive accomplishment in itself. Thomas Hammock never had that 10-win season, and they kind of fell back into mediocrity. This is still a really good program, and I do think that Northern Illinois is in the top half if you're looking at teams from a program standpoint, even though they have been dragged down by the Thomas Hammock era. But some of those remnants still remain because the interim head coach that's going to be in charge, at least as a placeholder, is Rob Harley. And we'll see how it works. It's still an adult in the room, but is he going to be the long-term guy in place? That's going to be the question that 2026 is going to answer. And if not, who do they go in order to be the next permanent head coach of Northern Illinois if it doesn't end up being Rob Harley? And why it's still a holdover from the Thomas Hammock era. He was the defensive coordinator last year. A defense that was a solid defensive unit in spite of all the offensive issues that this team had, which is why they ended up being towards the bottom of the MAC last season from a standings perspective. Again, and we talked about this earlier, the Mountain West overall is a higher level of competition than the MAC. So, some work to be done here in terms of being able to go and be competitive in this conference, being competitive in the Mountain West. That's a different level of effort than being a competitive MAC team. And that's just not trying to diss the MAC, but that is the reality of the situation here. And not to mention, while you're trying to get things together as you embroil yourselves in spring a little deeper, you're also worrying about your transfer portal because of the fact that Thomas Hammock left, it does open up a one-time transfer window. So that does open the door for more players to leave with no repercussions to be able to backfill any losses suffered during this one-time transfer portal period for Northern Illinois. So that's going to be something to watch as the offseason unfolds. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the additions and some of the losses that we've seen from Huskies football. And a lot of those notable ads was from a solid to supplement a solid defensive unit last year. Matthew Smith Davis is a perfect example of that, from Central State. He had 10 sacks last year. That could be a good ad. And then they've revamped their secondary, adding a Leon Lindo from Bryan, who had two interceptions, adding a Yassine Falk, who transfers from Marion, an NAIA powerhouse. He had 5 interceptions. You don't do that on accident. That's right place, right time, and that's good ball skills. So that's something to note there. Avery Jones from Lafayette of the FCS ranks. He had 3 interceptions. And then Marshall Washington Jr., part of a Long Island team that did upset Eastern Michigan to begin last season. He had 2 INTs in 2025. So the secondary is going to look a lot different because on the back end, you do lose Jasper Wheeler and Jacob Finley. Both are going to play for the Cincinnati Bearcats, and both of them did play in the secondary as well. And I'm also a little bit concerned of the offensive trench play as well as your linebackers going into the new college football season because they do lose Alvin Malcor, one of their best offensive tackles, to Miami of Ohio, and is likely going to be starting for the Redhawks this fall. So that is a notable loss. And then Philip Mikowski, linebacker for the Huskies. Excuse me. He had 87 tackles, 6.5 TFLs as well. He also transfers to Cincinnati as well. So Cincinnati did poach this NIU defense quite a bit, and that was before the transfer portal window. It opened up because of the Thomas Hammock not firing, but he did leave to take an NFL job. So that's something to keep an eye on. So I don't know what's going to happen. The portal is still open for NIU, so we don't know the extent of the losses. So for now, this ranking, this 130 ranking, is a little bit more of a placeholder than anything because I don't fully know what to think of Northern Illinois the same way that I think about some of these other teams that I previously revealed. So that's something that I wanted to get out of the way here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule and take a look and just kind of level set expectations in terms of what I think about NIU football going into the spring. And even though this team is going to look rough on paper, I talked about it. This is one of the better programs. Now, I had them as the 95th best program before Thomas Hammock took the Seattle job because of the sudden head coaching change and the less stability from the head coaching spot. I did knock him down a few spots, but they're still a top 100 program in my opinion, and a program that I still have in the top half of this new look Mountain West. So I think there's administrative pieces in play where in the next 2 to 3 years we can see NIU being a more serious player in terms of Mountain West title contention. It just probably isn't going to happen this year. But even then, I still see this team being able to win a few games here. Illinois State, they were gutted a little bit in the transfer portal after they had that Cinderella run to the FCS National Championship game where they were seated outside the top 16 and they found a way into the FCS national title game, and they nearly won that game against Montana State. This is not the same team as last year though, so I do think NIU can win that game off of the back of their defense. And calling my shot a little bit here as well. But even though I will have Nevada as the better team on paper, I think we will see an upset brewing. I think Northern Illinois can pull the upset on Nevada because I do trust in that defense enough to turn these games into a rock fight. And because Nevada also is going to have to make a cross country road trip with a coach in Jeff Chody, who is not fully proven yet, I think NIU can pull the upset there. And then towards the end of the year, I think we see UTEP be beaten by this NIU team. Um, and that could serve as the final nail in the coffin for Scotty Wall. I'm not going to touch up on that too often. If you want to hear my full thoughts on the UTEP NIU matchup, you can check out the UTEP deep dive because we did reveal them earlier in this series. But this is a tough go at it in the first year in the Mountain West. Non-conference play first and foremost at Iowa and at Arizona. Um, they're going to get their back blown out, and that's no diddy on that as well. That's going to be a rough go at it to begin your season, and then even in conference play, Air Force is going to be a quietly good football team that not a lot of people are talking about. I think NIU will have a hard time with the triple option. Wyoming on the road, that's another really good defensive unit. Could see the offense actually show signs of growth too. Hawaii is getting a lot of hype in terms of Mountain West title contention under Micah Alahada. Even with that being a home game, how are they going to slow down that offense while producing enough to win? That's going to be a question mark. And then two games that could end up being ugly on the road against UNLV, going up against Dan Mullen and his Rebel squad that went to the Mountain West title game last year. That could look rough. And then North Dakota State. North Dakota State, that's not your typical FCS to FBS transition. North Dakota State looks like they can compete right away. Kind of like a James Madison situation that we saw back in 2022. And then last thing I do want to note here on his schedule, um, the Georgia State game is winnable. Um, but I don't know if they're going to produce enough offensively to be able to win that game on the road. Um, Especially with it being the month of September, they might still be trying to find themselves under a brand new coaching, well, technically a brand new coaching staff, and with this more sudden coaching changes. Um, but then even look at some of the other games that they have on the road, like even San Jose State on the road, which I'm not too terribly high on the Spartans. I mean, cross country road trip in the middle of the season, that's not an easy ask either. So even then, that's a game where I see that being a safe loss. So that's why I have the ceiling not very high for NIU at all, being 4-8. But I think they can get a few wins here at the very least. I think they'll be have the same record as they did last year. But overall, I do think that this is going to be a transition year for the NIU Huskies, while they're treating this as a year-long process to look for the right head coach in order to lead NIU through the Mountain West era. And whatever happens to Rob Harley afterwards, truly don't know at that point. But yeah, that is going to be my NIU deep dive there. We'll have the Huskies winning 3 games there again because don't trust them enough as a football team. And Illinois State is a good FCS program. I will say this. There is a world where they lose every single game, and that's going to sound like a broken record a little bit from the bottom dwellers. We're going to eventually get to a point where we're going to see some safe wins in here. I promise you, but right now it's simply not going to be the case. But Hey, with that being said, that is going to be my deep dive on Northern Illinois football. Just to get that 50,000 foot perspective over to you guys. This is my 130th ranked team in the country. Let me know what you guys think. Do you have a higher view on Northern Illinois? Are you closer to where I'm at? Or is this a team that could be the worst team in the Mountain West? You see them even worse than UTEP. I do have UTEP at the very bottom of the Mountain West with NIU being a spot higher. Definitely let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section. But guys, really appreciate you guys being able to tune in and enjoy some NIU content and talking some NIU football going into the spring. If you enjoyed the content as well as seeing deep 50,000 feet first looks at all 138 teams. Definitely would appreciate the love by hitting that like button and hitting that subscribe button as well. I would truly appreciate it. But with that being said, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good night. Take care, everybody.